Well, let's speak to that for a little bit. Like, what goes into preparing a team? I mean, they obviously had to keep everything running while you were away. Like, how do you even go about approaching building that kind of team? Like, I know that's a big loaded question, but like highlights.
Right. So, the way I look at it, of course, as CEO, there's leadership, and you need to lead your team. And I never stopped leading them from a perspective of show my face, make sure that they get some interaction from me and encouragement. And really, I see as the CEO, your role is culture, vision, and key relationships. So that third part always stayed, right? I always made sure to cultivate and keep those relationships. As far as the tasks go, depending on the department, right? I had people in place for sales, marketing, operations, and finance, and not just the people, but also leadership in those positions as well.
Okay. So, what about like your customers and stuff and the people that you would interact with? I mean, how did you stay in touch with them, or how did you handle that? People that were used to you being there all the time. And now, even if you are checking emails, I'm guessing you're not doing it as frequently while you're gone.
Right. So I again, that was that whole year prior of me making sure of handing off those relationships, making sure that the customers were already used to not interacting with me a whole ton prior to that. So when that time came, it was already in place. It wasn't like I just decided, well, business is functioning. I'm the centerpiece of everything, and tomorrow I'm going to go away and not talk to anybody.
So they already had a pretty good relationship with somebody on your team. They knew who to contact if they needed something.
Exactly.
Right.
And I always make a point to elevate my people. And, I make a point with any clients or whatever, hey, I can do this for you, but this is so-and-so's department, and they're going to do such a better job of taking care of you on that than I'm going to do, because they're solely responsible for that. Whereas I'm responsible for relationships and leading the company.
And what do you think are some of the key roles that you have in place inside your company that helped enable this? Like, who are your internal leaders? What kind of jobs are they doing?
So the finance and making sure that I had structure there, right? Not just a bookkeeper paying the bills, but someone overseeing that and making decisions in that regard as well, right? Marketing, sales, the same thing. Making sure that there was leadership and not just doers, but actual people that, to borrow a term from the network marketing industry, like my downline, if you will, right?
Yeah, I've heard people bucket them into thinkers and doers, as well as another term I've heard used a lot. It's like you have to have thinkers in certain positions and you need doers in other positions. Right. I mean, it sounds like you already kind of, even before you started looking at this, you already had a good team of doers. Yeah, so absolutely. Cultivating your thinkers was really what you spent that year doing. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. What did that look like while you were away? I mean, you mentioned kind of having to check in. Like, did you have like regular, like weekly check-ins? Were you answering emails? Like, what did that look like while you were gone for 6 months?
Man, I gotta think back a little bit, but I always stayed available to my leadership team if they wanted to call me or they needed something. Mm-hmm. But I made sure that they were equipped to where generally they didn't, right? So I would from a relationship point check in on them to make sure they're all good. But outside of that, I made a point not to be super involved in the day-to-day.
Just letting them know, like reinforcing that you trusted them and reinforcing
and equipping them and empowering them to do their job. As CEO, prior to that is building the trust relationship and then removing the bottlenecks and the things that would stop things from moving forward. So they were empowered to make decisions and things like that.
That's a really good point too. Like, so while you were still there, what were you doing differently to make sure that they felt prepared and felt confident when you were going to be gone? Like, how did you prepare them in advance?
Well, communication's big, right? Always big. Kind of let everyone know what's going on. But I started treating that as if I were gone, quite a ways prior to actually being gone.
They kind of got to dip their toes in the water and do a test run while you were still there as a backup.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Well,
Yeah. So really doing this boils down to three things, right? You got to have a good strategy for how you're going to run your business, or how your business is going to run like independent of you. So you can be that visionary, that leader, and having to borrow a term from EOS, if anyone's familiar with that, it is having that implementer in place, right? And not that we run strictly EOS, but we do borrow some things from there and some things from some other places, and just personal experience and all of that. But you got to have a scalable strategy for your team to implement. You have to have a solid team of not just doers, but the thinkers, like you mentioned, Christina, leadership to lead that company forward. And number three is you need to have the tools and processes in place so that your team can implement that strategy. So those are really the three big components of that. And then there's a whole bunch of sub things that break down underneath there. It's a lot more to it, but that's at a high level what it takes.